Hey guys, it's Ann Yorks from the Flower Box, and I have a new tutorial for you just in time for Mother's Day. I am so excited for this tutorial because it features two redesigned cutters from Ann Clark, the Teapot and the Teacup, and they are adorable and they're the perfect size. So in this tutorial, we're going to take a look at a couple of wet on wet techniques with the Teapot. We're gonna do some really cute whimsical flowers on the teacup, and then we're also gonna make a really cute tea bag. Plus, tea is most fun when you have cookies with it. So we're gonna do a little heart cookie with some pink nonpareil accents and a really cute airbrushed croissant. If you want to recreate these cookies, check out our Mother's Day tea cookie decorating kit on flowerbox.com. It has the essential cutters, it has the Mother's Day stencil, it also has this really cool beaded scribe, and it has these really fun pearlized pink nonpareils all in the kit. Check it out in the status below. Let's cookie it up. First, I'm going to show you how to make the teapot cookie. I have my rose pink icing in my piping bag with a tip number 2, and I'm just gonna outline the lid on the teapot. Now I'm gonna outline the outside of the teapot using my white icing. And again, I like to use tip number 2 on my piping icing bag. Once the cookie's outlined, I'm ready to flood in that main section. So I have flood icing in my white bag, and I'm pretty generous with the icing. We are doing wet on wet polka dots with this cookie, which means while that white icing is still wet, we're going to add dots of blue flood to create an interesting background. But you can still be really generous with that base layer and not worry about an overflow. Those outlines will hold back the icing. And I don't want this cookie to be too busy because we're going to be stenciling Happy Mother's Day on it. So notice I'm spacing the dots out pretty wide. I love to start in the middle. It just really helps me visualize my spacing. Now I'm going to flood in the lid of the teapot. I really like this beaded scribe. I love how cute it is. It matches the cookie, which is always fun. And I also love the beads. It makes it really easy to grip the handle and hold on to the scribe as I'm working. So now I let the base icing of that teapot dry for at least 6 hours because we're putting pressure on the surface of the cookie. I don't want to put any dents in the icing. And then I'm ready to slide that icing across the stencil so that we can get the Happy Mother's Day message. I'm just being really careful to cover the stencil completely, and then I remove the excess before I lift up and reveal the message. Now you could use any message on this teapot, happy birthday, or you're great, or whatever stencil you want to use. Just make sure you size up the cookie cutter with the stencil to make sure that the message fits in the area that you're planning to stencil. And this Happy Mother's Day just happens to fit perfectly on this cookie. Now we're just gonna add a few more details to keep this cookie quick and cute. A heart at the top of the lid and a little scalloped finish to add some frill. Now let's look at the teacup. This is my favorite cookie from this set because it has these really cool whimsical wet on wet flowers. So I'm using a little guide, and you can get this guide, you can print it off of the kit page, and I just print and cut the paper out and traced it with the yellow marker. Those flowers don't need to be perfect because they're meant to be whimsical, and as you'll see when we start flooding in, they'll hold their shape, but they don't have to be perfectly traced. And so it's more of just a guide. So I want to outline my teacup areas, and don't forget to add the handle section as well. And now I'm ready to start those whimsical flowers. So I'm going to use the pastel rose pink just to flood in those whimsical flowers. And I'm using pretty light pressure as I go around. I don't want to over add my icing. I don't want to add too much icing to those areas because we're going to be going back and adding in more icing. And so I just don't want to get an overflow with this. Again, these flowers don't need to be perfect. They're meant to be whimsical, and really there's no wrong way to do this. So now right away I'm going in with my white icing, and notice how I'm kind of dipping into the pink to add those little notches. That kind of reforms those pink areas. So I just go around the edge of the flower. And if you miss one, you can just go back in and fill it in. So I'm just going around the edge of the flower, and where those petal definitions are, I'm just dipping that white icing in just to reshape those flowers. Then I just want to get all the white area flooded in, and you can use your beaded scribe to clean up the edges of the cookies, just because you have multiple icing areas there. So now I have my darker rose pink, and I'm just gonna squiggle and wiggle going around the edge of those flowers. Again, I'm using really light hand pressure to kind of get thin and thick areas of those squiggles and those wiggles. And I'm doing all of the flowers, those little partial ones and these full ones. And I like to swiggle around the edge, add the center, and then I know how much room I have to work to add any little petal detail. So I'll do the edges, the center, and then the little extra details. And then just to fill in sort of the negative space, I'm going back in and adding those blue dots, and this will help match our teapot as well. So after that has a chance to dry for an hour in front of the fan, I'm going to come back and add the blue icing. Allowing that first section to dry just really prevents any color bleeding between those icing areas. Now this cookie is almost done. I'm just going to add the tag from the tea bag. So I just pipe a little white shape and fill that in with the black string. And I'm going to add a bead border on the teacup just to add a little bit of fun detail, just like we did on the teapot. And then after the tag from the tea bag has a chance to dry that white icing, I'm going to add a cute little heart just for the final detail. And our beautiful floral teacup is ready for the tea party. Now the next 3 cookies are going to be pretty simple because that wet on wet floral design does have a little bit of a labor of love to it. So the tea bag, I'm going to add some white icing to the main section of the tea bag. And if you're looking to save time, you can actually flood in this entire area if you don't want to do that top section flooded separately. We're going to be piping lines over that area. So feel free to flood it all in if you just want to save a step on this cookie. But once I have the white icing in there, I'm going to go back in and add the ivory icing, which is our tea. Then I'll let that dry and I'll flood in the top section. And if you need to reshape it all, you can always go back in with your icing bag and just reshape that, or even use your scribe to kind of tap the icing into place and even everything out. And then we're gonna add some quick pipe details. These lines just sort of bring this cookie to life and add a little dimension to it. I'll outline each section and then I'll add a cute little rose pink heart at the top. Now let's take a look at the croissant. I'm going to pipe and outline each individual section of the croissant because we're not going to be adding any outlines to this cookie at the end. We're actually going to airbrush it to make it look like it has some golden tones to it from being baked. So I'm going to flood in alternating sections of the croissant, and I'll let those sections dry before I come back and flood in those other icing areas. This just adds that natural definition line between the cookies. And if you can see, my icing is just a little bit separated because I've been working on this cookie set for a while. Sometimes the icing will separate. And to fix that, I'm just gonna go in with my scribe and wiggle and squiggle all around and just get that icing to mix back up and look nice and even. So don't panic if you see some separation in your icing and a little bit of swirling. You can just swirl your scribe in there to make that look nice and even. So now let's get these croissants toasted. I have the croissant icing color is actually ivory, and then the airbrush color that I'm using is Harvest Brown from Chef Master. So I have the Harvest Brown in my airbrush, and I'm using the airbrush on a low speed. I want control over the flow of the color, and I'm just adding a little bit of airbrush color around the edge, and I'm also adding some between those sections just to make that croissant look like it's been baked in the oven and has some nice toasted and golden brown edges. If you're doing a dozen of these cookies, you can just airbrush them directly on the tray. That's what I do when I'm working on an order that has multiple cookies that need to get airbrushed and highlighted on the edges. It saves a little time versus moving the cookies to a new space. So now let's decorate the tastiest cookie in this set. And this is a mini heart cookie. And I just use up my leftover white, light rose pink, and dark rose pink icing to make these mini cookies. These are the first cookies that people will grab out of the set to munch on, and they're so easy to do. So I just wiggle and squiggle my way around the outside of the cookie, and then I flood in the cookie as well. And if you're using one icing consistency, you can just outline and flood all with the same icing bag. So now let's add a fun detail. I have these pink pearlized nonpareils, and on the corner of the bag I've cut just a tiny little hole, and I love this because then I don't have to touch these nonpareils. I can just easily shape them onto the surface of the cookie while the icing is still wet, and so the nonpareils will stick to the icing. And these have a little bit of a shine to them. I think that's why I like them so much. They're just really cute. They taste like vanilla. They're really delicious for a sprinkle, and they just add such a quick and fun detail to our cookies. And it looks cute on all of the icing colors. Well, thank you so much for watching this Mother's Day tea cookie set. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you're looking for the kit, check it out on flowerbox.com, and you'll also find the free download for that little whimsical flower if you'd like to cut and trace onto your teacup. As always, I would be so flattered if you recreated these cookies. So if you do, please tag me at the Flower Box Shop on Instagram and Facebook so I can see what you make. Thanks for watching, and happy decorating!